But without this European company in the Netherlands, none of...
From all over the world.
From all over the world, it wouldn't be able to function anymore. We have the political ambition to become the first continent, artificial intelligence, AI continent, scientific algorithms that will help researchers make future Nobel Prize-winning discoveries.
Hey, welcome back, dear friends. Recently, I paid a visit to the European Commission, and among others, I also spoke with Liviu Știrbăț, Head of Unit for Artificial Intelligence and Critical Technologies at the European Commission. We discussed the European Commission's view on artificial intelligence's future, innovation, regulation, technological sovereignty, and the major changes that AI will bring to science, the economy, and society. Let's watch the video together. Welcome.
It's a real honor to be with you today. I've been following you for a long time. My father is probably one of your biggest fans, and that's why I say it's truly an honor and a great joy for me.
Yes, and for me it's a great curiosity as well, because we're talking about the European Union, we're talking about critical technologies, in an economy where competitiveness is, I believe, determined by how valuable the technologies are. And we're talking about artificial intelligence, which is the technology of our lives? Exactly. So I'll ask a first direct question, which many people have. What is generally happening with artificial intelligence in Europe? Because I've heard a saying, I don't know how true it is, that the United States invents, China copies, and Europe regulates.
I've heard that saying too, and I'm often blamed that we only do that. But what I can tell you somehow, being on the inside and working directly in the field, is that it's only a small part of the truth in detail. Europe has invested a lot in artificial intelligence over time. The Union and the European Commission have funded research in artificial intelligence. Even during the so-called winters when no one else was doing it in the tradition, you can see that today. Many of the most influential researchers in artificial intelligence are either Europeans or were educated in Europe. That is another issue. They went to other countries to make use of their discoveries. One of the three godfathers of artificial intelligence, Ian LeCun, is French, and not only that. And even on the regulatory side, we have been very visible, and this is something the European Union has been doing for a long time, again, out of an active interest for the well-being of its citizens. We don't regulate for the sake of regulating, but we regulate to protect users, to encourage them to use it, to give them the assurance that the artificial intelligence they use, whether directly or integrated into products, is trustworthy and safe. And that's why we legislated, so it's a regulation that is friendly to innovation. We continue to have ambitions for implementation, so not only for investment in development, not only for regulation, but also for implementation. And recently, in October last year, we had 2 strategies adopted at the same time, dedicated to artificial intelligence, one dedicated to industrial applications, and one that I was responsible for, which is dedicated to its use in scientific research. We've discussed the foundation of competitiveness for some time to make sure that the foundations of research are well established in Europe and that we can also benefit from future technological waves by using artificial intelligence there. So we regulate, but not only that, we innovate and apply.
I somewhat understand regulation for the ordinary citizen because indeed the ordinary citizen can be abused through some tools they are not familiar with. When it comes to regulation in research, what needs to be regulated there? You can't just let the researcher use artificial intelligence tools and come up with new innovations.
And that's an extremely profound question. And it's something we've thought about a lot when this regulation for artificial intelligence was proposed. And it's something that is extremely well formulated and extremely clearly stated in the regulation as it was adopted after the discussions between the European Parliament and the Council. Namely, research and innovation are exceptional. They are not subject to this law. There are even some articles that specifically exempt research and innovation from the scope of the legislation. So the legislation only deals with products and uses on the market, commercial products. Everything related to research and innovation remains exactly as you said. so that we allow researchers to have access and be encouraged to use them without any worries or restrictions. In addition, no extra restrictions. It's very important for me to say this, besides the restrictions that the Researchers' Code of Good Conduct already imposes. Of course,
Absolutely, there have to be some ethical rules. Now let's get back to protecting the average citizen. We see a lot of videos on Facebook, and we can't even tell anymore which ones are made by artificial intelligence and which ones aren't. Can't Facebook be required to show, sir, a label there saying this was made with artificial intelligence?
again, a very appropriate question because it's something we've thought about again. And my colleagues who work at the digital department who handle regulation are currently working on the implementation stages of this regulation of artificial intelligence, in which all the labeling of production generated with the help of artificial intelligence will be, so this rule will exist. It's something that the Act, precisely so that it won't be very, the regulation, the artificial intelligence law, so that it won't be very disruptive for the market in Europe. We discuss, negotiate, reflect, we discuss together, and then we implement step by step so that companies know in advance that in a year they will have to do this, in 2 years they will have to do that. And the labeling, this is one of the latest stages that we are preparing now, as I said, with experts and with the companies that produce the tools which citizens will use afterwards, to make sure that from a technical point of view it's okay, but also from an ethical point of view. So the label comes. For now, however, we have to put up with the whole flood of production for a while.
Yes, with artificial intelligence and with critical technologies, as you mentioned. Yes, critical technologies. Artificial intelligence is a critical technology. What are critical technologies? By definition?
We have a definition that is anchored in a strategy that came out in 2024, a European economic security strategy, in which 10 strategies were identified, 10 in which 10 technologies were identified. Also, in this spirit of regulation and making policies as well thought out and as strategic as possible, we started to address this. The first 4 identified as the most, how many? Among the critical technologies, and it's public in first place: artificial intelligence, semiconductors, quantum technology, and biotechnology. A lot of work has already been done on these 4. Some economic risk analyses have been done, and in my team we took care of the risk analysis for biotechnologies. What does economic security and economic risk analysis mean? It means looking at all the value chains, supply chains, to see where Europe is dependent on others, but something that really fascinates me is where others are dependent on Europe. And here we have a very, very strong example from the semiconductor sector and its intersection with artificial intelligence, namely the Dutch company Advanced Semiconductor Materials Lithography, ESML, which is unique in the world, along with the entire semiconductor production chain. Although maybe on the news we see Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, we see NVIDIA, we see Advanced Micro Devices. Now Google and Apple are also producing their own, but without this European company. In the Netherlands, nothing from
all over the world.
From all over the world would be able to function anymore. And that's why I say this is a dependency that has been identified. And we are taking measures accordingly to defend, to protect, to replicate this success where the whole world depends on Europe, because this is related to our economic security. And that's why I was saying that the other technologies we're starting to work on now are all about ultra-advanced chemistry, advanced materials, launchers, and everything related to space robotics, rocket launchers. We're working on fusion. Those are the other 6 we're launching the project for as well. The idea is to protect what is important for Europe, to promote so that we have more of these kinds of technologies and successes in these technologies, and to enter into partnerships with others, because we can't do it alone. So Europe working hand in hand with partners who want to do it.
I understand. So in the end, it comes down to trying not to be dependent on others, and on the other hand, making others dependent on you.
Of course.
But SML just laid off 1,700 people. It was on the news. What does the European Union say? Well, will they take SML or not?
I know, I saw it too, and it's a very important discussion. And this, I'm convinced that many of the 1,700 will create their own startups, and that's happening a lot in Europe right now. There's a real buzz. It's truly a buzz of startup creation. We have a lot of catching up to do because we joined this game quite late, but now there's more and more private capital as well as state capital. The European Union, which is one of the largest investment funds in the startup space, is very active. And yes, indeed, there are 1,700 people. We can't treat this issue with indifference, but these are very educated people, people who now have an ecosystem around them. In the Eindhoven area of the Netherlands, where they are based, mainly there is this ecosystem that I'm sure will create other jobs.
Let's hope for those 1,700.
More will appear, let's hope now.
If we go back to artificial intelligence as a critical technology, I sit and think, because for us now, for ordinary people, what is artificial intelligence? What generative pre-trained transformer are you talking about? What generative pre-trained transformer makes you some videos on shore or something like that? But I imagine that you see the future differently there. I mean, in 10 years, what will artificial intelligence be? Well, it will be in products, it will be in all devices, it will be in all cars, and then whoever controls it actually controls the cars too, and so on. Actually, should we rely on the artificial intelligence that's being developed at Anthropic in the United States or at OpenAI in the United States? It would be good for us to have it here in Europe. That's the main idea. And if that's the case, there will be companies that will grow to such a high level in Europe. I'm talking about artificial intelligence to replace what OpenAI or Anthropic are doing here in Europe. And then to make those artificial intelligence products indispensable for Volkswagen cars made in Germany?
Indeed, and that's clearly a very, very key question. And we're working at the European Union level, but also with the member states, of course, exactly in this direction. We still have in the news the European champion, which is Mistral, who are still French, although they have entered into an increasingly close partnership with the Americans, with Microsoft, but also with others. But as I was saying about advanced semiconductor materials lithography earlier, advanced semiconductor materials lithography made a massive capital injection. So we have a European partnership, semiconductors, algorithm development. So we already have things to be proud of and reasons to hope that things will get better. When it comes to product integration, Europe is doing very well, even in terms of usage. I've seen some opinion polls showing that in many European countries, both citizens and companies are much more confident in using artificial intelligence than in America. In the States, they are facing a big problem of suspicion and it's a discussion we don't need to have, not now. Let me already tell you that Europe is very well prepared for applications and for implementation. But what I also want to tell you, still related to research, as we were talking about, and exactly in the field I deal with every day, is the use of artificial intelligence. Not for chatbots and for chatbots. And these kinds of discussions, which are often frustrating, with a virtual assistant from the bank who answers you in 2 PR, or sends you chasing after cavers for nothing, but scientific algorithms that will help researchers make the next future discoveries. About the Nobel Prize in 2024, the Nobel Prizes, 2 of them for physics and chemistry were for artificial intelligence, the one for physics, Geoffrey Hinton, for the architecture that forms the foundation, for chat, generative pre-trained transformer, and Claude, and all these algorithms. And for chemistry, Demis Hassabis was awarded. John Jumper and another researcher whose name escapes me now, for AlphaFold, which solved a massive problem in chemistry in just a few months. And what we're trying to do now is to fund the development of scientific algorithms, sovereign, to use that term, which is very trendy right now. European, which we want to make available to researchers, mainly European, but we're not among those who restrict access. On the contrary, as I was saying, in over 10 years, not just machines with artificial intelligence, but also new physical compounds. So an unexpected advance in astrophysics or in biology for longevity and other things that are currently not possible for researchers. Just like you are, but for what? Will they exist, but will they be accessible to researchers who work with these very advanced artificial intelligences? And for research, and for European research, I want to tell you, right now there is the European Research Funding Program Horizon Europe, which will end at the end of 2027. But we are already working, speaking of regulation and negotiation, we are already working on the future financial framework for research, which will be much larger. Europe has allocated many more resources for research. It's a very positive signal, which we hope the member states will follow as well. And artificial intelligence, but especially science-based and science-anchored artificial intelligence, is one of the examples given in this research budget proposal as something that Europe can lead. So we're talking about the future architecture of artificial intelligence, not the one we have now, which is trained on internet forums and cat pictures. So not everything humanity has produced on the internet for so long, but on physics, on equations, on data. So it will be much more reliable, much more performant, much more European, we hope.
So I understand that it's about an infrastructure that is going to be created and will be made available to researchers from the European Union. So a researcher from physics at the IFI NHK Physics Institute, for example, will have access to that structure to run their work. I don't know exactly what kind of distribution there will be.
That's exactly what we're talking about. To create a set of European tools that we make available to researchers in Europe so they can do their research, publish their articles, and win grants using these tools.
I have a question from my son, I have to say, who said that this idea is interesting, so to speak, philosophically. We're moving into a society that will be based on it, whether we want it or not. Just like when electricity first appeared, what was it? Electricity. In the beginning, it was just a game. Some people had a little bit of electricity here and there, but the farmer was still using the hoe and lighting his home with a flame. But now we're all dependent on electricity. If the electricity goes out, we have nowhere to store our food. The refrigerator, and he says this, Christian Pressura says, in 1,020 years, we'll have a civilization that will be dependent on it, because it will enter all layers of society, in technology, in organization. I don't know what it is, how this transition towards a society based on it is seen from the European Commission, and what is the connection between them. And about bureaucratization, making things more efficient. What is it today? Answer.
It's a question that, yes, indeed, may seem philosophical, but actually it's very concrete. And this transition you were talking about and the parallel with electricity, unlike that transition which took a long time over the course of people's lives, now everything happens overnight. So this makes it much more concrete. And it's not just philosophical, it's not just a philosophical reflection, but there are decisions including which university to attend, what training to...
Fits my psychological profile.
So am I compatible or not? Yes, absolutely. What I can tell you is that the European Union is very supports and prepares for this transition. We have the political ambition to become the first continent, artificial intelligence, AI continent. It's a declarative document, a strategy that was adopted last year. We're working on this, we're investing a lot in this, and I think that as a society, we in Europe are very well prepared for this transition, much better prepared than others. We have a very well-educated society, a critical spirit that is somehow in our nature. We still have a lot of respect for research and for science, which helps us navigate and overcome this transition. We have a very well-established social safety net, which protects us and shields us a bit from the very devastating effects of this transition. And that's why I'm convinced that Europe will come out as a winner from this period. So in 10 years, as we were talking about this 10-year horizon, I'm sure that Europe will be stronger, more cohesive, more inclusive, because we have all these advantages. And I was recently thinking about this discussion. We see how this transition is being prepared and perceived in the States. where they've really pushed hard on the accelerator, on the adoption side. But as I was saying from these surveys, the population is quite suspicious and doesn't support the politicians in this transition. I was thinking I'm going to India in 2 weeks, where the Great AI Impact Summit will take place, where, among other things, science will be discussed for the first time. Science is one of the 7 areas of application that India has chosen as a focus. And in India, they are also very affected now by this transition. As I was already telling you, it's not at all philosophical. They have a lot of call centers where automation has practically erased the need for this type of job. And we're talking about tens of millions of people who will have to find work and who don't have a social safety net. They don't have unemployment benefits, the infrastructure for support to get other professional training. That's why I'm telling you, my belief is that in Europe we are very well positioned for this transition.
Thank you very much for answering these questions, and good luck with what you are about to do.
With great pleasure, and once again, I also thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. It was a pleasure.